Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. Today we are joined by a very special guest. Carl Verheyen is here. Carl?
Good to see you, Mitch.
Great to see you again.
Yeah.
You were here, well, you've been here many times.
I think this is my 6th trip out here.
6th trip?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. And we did actually an extensive video early on where we talked about your early career and some of the things, your approach to guitar and some of those things. But we have some special stuff here today. We're going to be showing some incredible instruments. And
Great.
I think having some fun. But tell us why you're here. What are you up to?
Well, I'm working on a new album, and I've come here a couple times to do the Pro Tools class where Mark Hornsby, the engineer, will have 15 people in there, and me and a couple other guys are out here playing the music, and it's a class about Pro Tools. I liked the sound that he was getting so much, and I liked the vibe here, and the fact that it's Sweetwater, so everything you need is available.
Right.
I liked all that stuff enough to say I'd love to do a record here, and that's where this all got started. He said, "Come on out."
Right, right. So you had a drummer and a bass player with you, correct?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
So you lay down basic tracks with them, and then
We did Monday, Tuesday, 2 songs a day, which is a nice luxury because on past albums I've done like 5 songs in a day.
right,
you know?
right.
So we did the 2 songs on Monday, and then we did another 2 on Tuesday, and then I'm spending Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday doing overdubs.
Okay.
And it's a nice, comfortable pace. We get it where we think we've got it, where we think it's finished. Then come in the next morning and listen and go, you know, it would be better if I did this. Then we start on the next tune. So
Right. Now, are these? Is this your regular band that you're touring with and playing with?
Yeah.
These songs you've been doing on the road?
Well, the bass player's been with me on and a little bit off, but mostly on since 1988.
Oh,
We've
wow.
been playing a long time together. The drummer's been with me on the last couple of tours, and I just love him. He's out of Oakland, a guy named John Mater. And Stu Hamm, the bass player, who did my last tour with me over in Europe and the States, he introduced me to John. And I just fell in love with the guy. He's really a fantastic drummer. And he's thinking, you know, I've had the cream of the crop of drummers throughout the years in the band, from Greg Bissonette to Wilfredo Reyes, Bernie Dressel, all these heavy cats.
Right.
And one thing I really like about Wilfredo Reyes is he's coming from a percussionist family. So he's not afraid to play a kit with maracas or shakers or a tambourine too, you know, just pick stuff up and create these textures. And he's also got a great groove. Well, Mater is the same way, and I needed a new guy because Wally's been doing Chicago for the last 2 years.
Right.
So he's out on the road with those guys.
Right. So you have to work around schedules. That's
Yeah.
the way it is sometimes.
Yeah.
But it sounds like obviously got a great player. So.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this guy's wonderful, and Chicago never stops. They're doing something every month. So,
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, so that's how I got out here.
Absolutely. Well, well, we're so happy to have you here.
Oh,
and I
thank
heard a
you.
little bit of one of the tracks that you were playing, and it sounds incredible. We can't wait for the
great.
finished record. So lots of
Cool.
fun stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Absolutely. So this is you actually just released a solo record, right?
Yeah. So I did a solo guitar record called Solo Guitar Improvisations back in 2000, and I just never heard the end of people saying, when are you going to do another one? But to come up with all those arrangements, you know how it is with acoustic. You can't just go play a song. You know, you have to come up with your version of the song. It has to be different from all the other cats. To compound that, I've been doing a lot of guitar festivals in the last few years, and I show up at a festival and Tommy Emmanuel's playing, or you know, my buddy Lawrence Juber, and you know, so you kind of go, man, what am I doing releasing a solo guitar record when those guys are on the planet? You know,
Right, right.
So it took me a long time to get up something that I thought, this is worth putting out. This is worth it. I got enough arrangements, and the other thing I'm into is I like to play solo Stratocaster, solo electric guitar. And so I throw a few of those in on a record too, you know.
Right.
So.
Nice, nice. And you've been doing some dates where you're playing solo acoustic.
Maybe 6 or 7 between January and you know, just little one-offs because you don't have a band and you don't have 5 hotel rooms and you don't have, so you can go, I'll be in Seattle next weekend, as a matter of fact. So, you know, fly up, do a gig in Seattle, then one out on Bainbridge Island, and then home. So
Nice.
it's easy, a lot easier to do. You actually make money.
Right. Nice. That's a good thing.
So, yeah.
So obviously you're incredibly busy between that and all your session work and Supertramp and you know, playing on film scores and all kinds of stuff going on there. So
Yeah. I never stop, you know.
Yeah, that's
So,
great. That's
yeah.
great. That's great. So how does the pre-production differ when you're coming in with a band like this? Do you have everything scored out for them?
I do. However, John had only heard one of the songs, so And when I do demos at home, I've been using Pro Tools in my house, and I've just been recording demos, but I don't even want to program drums. I would rather say, here's the track, what are you hearing? Because no matter what I do, I don't even want them, it'll never be as good as what they can do, So,
Right.
so I'll come up with bass lines and guitar parts and stuff, and maybe Rickenbacker and maybe 12 string, or put some acoustics down, and basically get it sort of fleshed out to where I go, these are the overdubs I'm going to do. And when it came to this project, we picked 4 songs, and I own about 70 guitars, but I figured I can't bring them all. So I've got these 2 guitar trunks that you'll see in a minute, and loaded up every possible instrument that I could hear on these tracks. And so far, I haven't wanted for anything.
Nice.
I haven't gone, darn it, I wish I brought that Dane Electro thing or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Everything I've heard has been stuff that I brought.
Right.
So.
Well, looking around, we're in Studio A here at Sweetwater, and it is packed full of Carl's gear, between cabinets and amps and amp heads and 3 pedal boards you brought with you, loaded up with stuff, and a big rack over here, and all kinds of instruments. And we're going to talk about some of these different things and where you choose to use them.
Right.
Well, actually, let's talk about that now. So, for example, you have Marshalls, you've got Fenders, you've got Voxes, you've got a variety of boutique amplifiers. What leads you to choose a particular amplifier for a track?
Well, that's a really good question. How amps have EL34 tubes or 6L6s or EL84s or 6 V6s. They all have, I think, a different way the harmonics stack up. And I could be crazy, but I know that if I record the whole song with the same amp, it doesn't sound as rich harmonically in those upper harmonics as it does when you use this little amp for here, this little Vox for this sound, and then maybe a Fender for that sound, and maybe a Marshall for that sound. That's 3 different kinds of tubes, right?
Right.
So I could be crazy, but I honestly feel that when you're orchestrating a song, you want that richness. You want these tubes and those harmonics to react with these harmonics, and that's what gives you a great overall tone.
Right.
And I'm very conscious of, having been a studio musician for many, many years, I realized early on that if I play like a C minor on my electric guitar down here, right, it's going to be in that same mid-range area with the keyboards, with even the horns. Everything's going to be crowding for the mid-range. So I like to think of the speaker. And I know the bass player's coming out down here, and I know the cymbals and maybe the sibilance on the voice is coming out up here. Everybody else is crowding this mid-range, the B3, the piano, the horn guys, all the guitars, So what I try to do is find something in those upper mids that's going to peek through. And so that's when I'm thinking of orchestration with guitars. I think that's the state of the art of guitar records anyway, or guitar player records. We've heard all those guys shred for years, right? And now, what can you do with the instrument that's going to bear repeated listening?
Right.
Because I got to be honest. I mean, I buy those shredder records by guys.
Sure.
And I play them once, and maybe twice. Then I file it. Okay, got it. That's what that is. But there are records I buy that have that orchestration of the instrument, and that I don't know. That's for me what bears repeated listening. Those are the records I play a lot. So
when you're talking about things peeking through in the upper mid-range, are you talking about tonally, or are you talking about from a playing standpoint? From the
really both. Really both. Because we took a Wechter high string. I brought a little Washburn high string that I have.
Right.
It's a little guitar, but the Wechter one that was hanging on the wall in here has a pickup in it. So we came out of that and then ran it through this phase shifter and set it on a fast phase and ran it through a Fender Princeton. And it was obviously a high string. If you don't know what that is, that's when you take the bottom 3 strings off of a 12 string. So you've got this E, this A, and then this, what would be D, right? And then this G, and then these 2 strings are the same.
Right.
That's what a high string is, just in case they don't know.
Sure.
Those guys.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, An electric high string through a phase shifter just finds its own little spot in the mix with some acoustics that was magical, So that's what I'm talking about, that kind of orchestration and finding a part that's going to peek through up here, add to the sonic girth of the track.
Right.
So,
when you're doing your demos, you're composing the songs, you're putting together the arrangements, is that something you said, I need to have this in here as you're doing that, or is that something that occurs to you when you're in the studio and there's a hole or something that you're trying to fill?
I did bring the high string thinking we could probably use it, but I think it was Mark, the engineer producer, who said, let's get an electric high string. That's even cooler. But I've actually shied away from demos my entire life until I call Sweetwater and say, it's time for me to get Pro Tools at my house, because people are asking me to track on their records from Sweden or Italy or Florida. Would you put a solo down? And I've always just gone over to a guy's house. I've been in the studio so much in my life wearing headphones that I never wanted a home studio. And this guy's got a great home studio.
Oh, thank you.
I love your room. That's
thank
really
you very
cool.
much.
But I've always been a guy that says, no, I'm gonna use my music room to play, practice, listen, write, and not record. I'll just go somewhere to record. And I'm from LA, so we have the greatest recording studios, I think some of the greatest in the world, And I've done a lot of records at Sunset Sound, where everything from, Exile on Main Street to Led Zeppelin 4 to Van Halen 1 and 2, these records have been done there. And so they've got good guitar sounds reeking from those walls. So can't get that in your bedroom or your studio room or something. So So anyway, so I've always shied away from not only having a home studio, but from making demos. Better to have a rehearsal and say, what would a real bass player do? So only recently have I gotten into that game.
Yeah.
Kicking and screaming.
Dragging you in?
Yeah.
But still coming here, or coming to a commercial studio, that allows you then to focus more as an artist on what you're doing too. You're not having to do the recording and the playing at the same time. So
exactly.
Another advantage too.
It really is. It's great to have ears that are other than mine too. The guys go, it would be really neat if you made this the vamp on the way out. And one tune that I had arranged and everything, I had 2 choruses of solo, and that would be it. This is at the end, kind of a fade out. And we decided to make it 1 chorus of solo, then hit this little vamp. And with this background vocal idea I had, we threw the backgrounds in there, and all of a sudden, you hit this vamp and you never want the song to end. And so that was a really great idea that actually Mark had. So with fresh ears, you've been living for the song for 4 or 5 months, you're done, it's in there, demo love.
Right. You can't read the demo.
That's right.
So speaking of ideas, we had the pleasure of you coming out and working on a project that I was part of, where you laid down a bunch of solos and some rhythm tracks and things, and we had a lot of fun with that. But what really impressed me when we were doing that is we had these songs, and you'd play a part, and it was always great, but sometimes not the part we were looking for, so you'd play something else, play something else, play something else. What impressed me is how fast you came up with those ideas and how different each idea was.
Man.
How do you cultivate that skill, or where does that come from?
Well, first of all, you make your living as a rhythm guitar player. You get to play lead guitar solos on tracks 5% of the time. The rest of the time as a studio player, as a guitarist for hire or anything, even on the road or whatever with a band, you're really playing rhythm guitar. So what players nowadays forget is they might have a whole warehouse mental money in the bank of lines they can play for C7th, but they don't have that kind of depth of rhythm licks. And you can divide rhythm guitar into multiple schools. You can say, I want to be in the Steve Cropper school, sliding 4ths and 6ths, right? I want to be in the Jimi Hendrix, Curtis Mayfield school, I want to be in the Andy Summers school. I want to be in the Edge school. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So those are all cataloged up there, and there's probably a dozen more that I could just call on those influences and the fact that I've studied those guys, I recommend getting the Stax Volt Singles 12 CD set and hearing all the great stuff Steve Cropper came up with over the years and how he just gets better and better. So you listen to those kind of guys, all those people I just mentioned, and try to warehouse those ideas in your head, because there have been many times in the studio where a producer doesn't know what he wants. He will only know when you play it.
Right.
He can't tell you what he's looking for, but he can tell you when he hears it.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for, you know.
Right, right.
So you have to have that catalog of stuff. And I think a lot of young players, a lot of guitar players don't realize that that's a huge part of making a living.
Mm-hmm.
So
getting that rhythm guitar together.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So how does the choice of tones factor into that? Do you spend time at home working on your sounds? And
Yeah. I've got a lot of gear at home. I brought a lot of stuff.
You brought a lot of stuff.
But I got more. I got that much again at home that I just said, no, I don't hear this on these tracks, you know. And but yeah, I do. I've got a big 3-car garage that I'll back the cars out and set stuff up and say, I wonder what this would sound like with this and that and the other. So I'm a big Fender Princeton guy for practicing. Got a couple Princetons, blackface Princetons just built in. They almost never leave, you know, and they're really great for tuning, adjusting, tweaking your instruments, you know, and making sure the pickup heights are right. And, you know, I think that's what God wanted electric guitar to sound like.
So Princeton.
Yeah, reverb, Princeton reverb. Yeah.
Nice. So, nice, awesome.
So I left those at home and brought a little silver face with me around here somewhere. And so, but that's really pretty much the same amp. The early '60s Silverface, late '60s Silverface one, same stuff going on. So
right.
Anyway,
you've got some incredible amps here. You have a real Plexi.
Yeah, I got two. I got a 1968 JMP 50, right? And then I got a JTM 45. Is that right?
Right.
JTM,
Yeah.
right? That's a 66. And it's interesting because the back panel of it is white. And somebody said, "You got a white panel? Oh my God, those are amazing."
Right.
I don't get, if it sounds good, I'll take it. You know, I don't care what the panel looks like.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, you also brought an incredible array of guitars. Let's take a tour of some of the things that you brought with you.
Okay.
So why don't we start with some of the vintage acoustics that you brought with you here.
Okay.
This is a gorgeous Gibson.
Yeah, this one I found a 59. This is a J45. No, J50.
J50.
I think the 45 is just sunburst. That's the difference. Anyway, this is a J50, slump-shouldered. I found a 59, and I took it home and loved it. And then a couple weeks later, in the same music store in LA, I found this one, which is 51, and it was better. So I went back and traded it in. And anyway, I use this for strumming. It's just, you know, these Gibsons self-compress. And this is a funny story. I gave John Fogerty guitar lessons for about a year, like 2 or 3 a week. And he just called me and said, "Hey, I need some lessons." So I used to give him lessons, and he says, "Do you have any Gibson acoustics?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he goes, "You should get some because they're rock."
Nice.
Whereas Martins are nice and sweet for finger picking, stuff like that. These have a certain rockin' thing they do. And so, to me, this is kind of the sound of Rubber Soul, you know, by the Beatles. It's got that real compressed kind of sound.
That is an incredibly loud guitar. You probably don't even mic it.
Yeah. Another secret of mine that I use these Clayton guitar picks that are, I don't know if they're Teflon or whatever, but you guys probably can't hear this at home, but if I play a D chord with my regular pick, which is just a Fender heavy, and then these things, they have a completely different sound. You get a lot of pick noise and a lot of high end, and it's just great in a track. It scrubs away.
Yeah, very articulate. So what do you have here?
You know, I bought this from a guy walking down the street in 1975.
Really?
It's a F50. Not to be confused with the J50.
Right.
It's an F50. Giant maple guitar, not very loud. You know, it doesn't have a lot of sound, but it's got a real sweet tone to it, and it's got like a jazz guitar neck, as you can see. It's got binding on the side.
Right.
And I was sitting outside playing my guitar in the front porch of this little apartment I rented with some musicians in Newport Beach on the peninsula. And this guy walks by and he goes, "Hey, you a guitar player?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I got a guitar for you. I'll go get it." So he leaves and comes back and sells me this thing. And so I've had it since '75. That's a long time.
That's awesome.
I remember taking it on my honeymoon to Hawaii.
Is that right? That's awesome.
Anyway, but it's got a really nice, sweet sound. It's tuned like a low C and a G right now, but
Do you often use this for alter tunings like that?
yeah, it seems to be pretty stable in that department. And boy, is it easy to play. Look how low the action is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, Cool.
So this is a very interesting guitar. It's a Washburn, right?
Yeah, this is a travel guitar, but it makes a good high string. And as I was saying before, you use the octave strings of a 12 string, and then the top two are the same. So when you play a chord, I'll use my special pick. You get a really nice high tone out of it, and it just sort of feathers into a track. This particular one, I've recorded it, and it almost sounds like a harpsichord. Listen to this. It's not quite in tune, but you can hear what I mean. It's almost got a little sound. You can shut your eyes and think harpsichord vibe.
Yeah, it's got that attack.
Yeah.
Really,
we haven't used this on the record. We've been using this Wechter one so far, but I brought it.
Do you ever use a high-strung or Nashville-strung guitar like this to duplicate to double a 6-string to get a like a 12-string
12-string sound, yeah, and you can stereoize them or not. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty versatile instrument to have in your arsenal.
Yeah, this is called a Rover.
Nice.
R-O-10.
So this Martin looks like it's been played.
Yeah, this is a 59 D18 I've had for many years. The Martin rep was here the other day, and I met him, and he loved it, but he said it's ready for a neck reset, which I believe you have to do on the old ones occasionally.
Right.
He goes, it'll play better and sound better, and so I'm going, all right, I'll do that, you know. So, but it's a D18. I find Martin's really nice for finger picking. They got that sweet sound. You know, they do that bluegrass thing and this sweet finger picking thing really nice.
Right.
I capo it all the time. Love playing it.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a
just one of
gorgeous
those
guitar.
Yeah, it's just nice and lived in, you know.
Absolutely.
That's mahogany, right? That would
think back on
definitely
the
be
time.
mahogany. So,
Nice.
I asked the expert when you got him around. So, all right.
So moving on to electrics, this is obviously a Stratocaster.
Yeah, this is a 1958, and I've had it since about 1991 or something. I bought it many years ago, and I was doing a concert and maybe a master class along with it in Pittsburgh one time at Duquesne University. And the other guy that was a speaker there was Seymour Duncan. And we were talking, and he's been a friend for many years, and he said, you know, you're a Strat guy. There's a Strat you need to own. And I said, where is it? And he goes, it's at a place called Voltage Guitars in Los Angeles. He says, it's the best Strat I've ever heard in terms of the way the pickups are balanced. Like, this is nice and fat and woodsy sounding. This one is glassy, and this one is bright like a telly. But the natural progression between the three is the best I've ever heard. You ought to own that. So I go, oh boy, what year is it? And he goes, 58. So I got home and went down there the next day, and I walked into the store, and my eyes just went, wow, that's got to be it. So first thing I did was go heft it, right? I just lifted it off the wall like this, and it's featherweight. Check it out.
Oh yeah.
Really light,
Yeah,
like
really light.
7.2 pounds or something. Then I have this little test I do where I play the B string and feel down here.
Right.
It's just a silly maneuver of mine, but if the B string's causing the whole thing to wiggle, you got a live one, especially if it's nice and light. Because you can always change pickups. You know, with new guitars, I've got some new Strats that sound amazing just because they've got that resonance and that wiggle.
Right, right.
So anyway, I went in there and checked it out, and you know, they wanted a lot of money for it, even though it was kind of before vintage guitars just exploded, right? So I checked it out and played it for about a half an hour and said, well, I can't afford it. So I went home, you know, and lying in my bed that night, covers, ping, I gotta have it. You know, you're just in there, you're just kind of like, no, that one's not getting away. So I went down there and got it the next day.
Nice.
And it's been a great guitar. One of my albums called Atlas Overload, I wanted one guitar to be the principal sound throughout, and it was this one.
Right.
So, yeah, I love this whole thing.
Nice. So having all these Strats, new ones, old ones, vintage, what leads you to choose this one over another one?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. It's, you know, the maple neck makes you see and feel and play a little bit differently. I don't know if it does you, but maple always does something slightly different, whether it's the overtones or, yeah, I don't know what, I can't even begin to put my finger on it, but I play different lines when I see the maple neck. Something's different. So, so anyway.
Nice, that's gorgeous.
Oh, I love it. It kind of looks like it's been to the Middle East.
Yes. So we've got another beautiful Strat here.
This is a 61, and I've had it the longest. I think I bought it in about 85. And I think this was originally seafoam green. I've heard people say it's Daphne blue because you can see like a lighter blue when you take the pick guard off, which of course I never do.
Right.
But this is a real rocker. I choose this one I want to really rock and maintain Stratocaster status, right?
Right.
There's a certain thing that single coils pickups do that is unattractive, and that is they can really mush out down below C sharp. You know, like the C sharp might be the last sharp tone you get, and then they get a little mushy. For some reason, this one just doesn't. This one stays rocking all the way down to, you know, the lowest tones. And, you know, stock 61, I've been told by a guy out in LA named John Carruthers, that this was a Fender repaint. They've repainted this guitar at Fender. And he said he knows that because there's a couple of dimples where the jig grabs it while they're spraying it. And he says probably what happened is they got a special order and said, we'll just make this one green, or maybe it was a botched sunburst. It could have been anything.
Right.
But he thinks it was repainted at Fender, you know, and it's a Fender color.
Right.
So I think this Strat has been with me maybe the longest of the old ones because 19.
Right.
Been on lots of records.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. So are you, you mentioned this is stock, are you, is that important to you that you maintain the vintage instruments in exactly the original condition, or do you change them to make them more player friendly?
I haven't had to do much of that. I know there's a new knob on that 58 for here, and that's it, really. And the 5-way, of course. You know, you got to do 5-way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll make a change if you feel like it's essential to the instrument.
Right. It looks like somebody had a string tree there. You know.
At some point, right.
Yeah, and I just have the stock string tree, but yeah, I love this whole thing. So
nice. And this is a 3-color sunburst.
Yeah, this is 65. So this is made in January of 65, and it's got a thicker headstock, which makes for a bigger sound. It somehow sounds really big and fat. I bought it in about 1988 or 89, and once again, completely stock. And I think this is my favorite for rhythm guitar and for just clear, clean Strat playing.
Right.
Not my favorite one to play lead on, and yet, you know, solos on, and yet whenever I do, I go, why not? Because it really sounds great. I always think the other ones rock a little more. But there's nothing wrong with this one. It's got a bigger, fatter neck, and like I said, there's more wood here. And something about that just makes it, yeah, it's great.
Right.
All my Strats have that Verheyen setup on them.
Right, right. Get the minor third on.
Right, minor third and whole step and half step, and they stay right in tune. Of course, I haven't even tuned this one yet today, but anyway, so.
Right.
But yeah, this one's a great one.
Are these all original frets in all these? They look really, really clean.
No, I think I've had them refretted. I mean, I know I have over the years. You know, as you just wear them down to where there's not much left, you got to do that.
Right.
So, but I do a level and dress or grind and polish, whatever they call it, a handful of times until it's just now we need frets.
Right.
So anyway, boom.
Great. And you have got a gorgeous gold top here.
Yeah, this is 1954 P90s. Great story how I got it. I joined the band Supertramp in '85, and they said, one of the crew guys said, we've got this warehouse with some guitar stuff you might want to look at. Basically, take what you need. So I go down to the warehouse and met this guy there. His name was Ian Lloyd Bisley. And he opened the warehouse, and there was a couple of Mesa Boogie heads. And I said, well, I can use these and this pedal and maybe this thing, and brought them home. And then I realized I don't really need 2 Mesa Boogie heads. So I took one down to the shop and said, can I trade this in on something? And they said, yeah. And I got straight across for this 54 Paul without any more money. So it was like free. You only get one of those deals in your life.
Yeah, I was still waiting for mine.
Yeah. You wait, just wait a little longer. Somebody will give you something, and you'll trade it in on something worth 100 times more money.
Yeah, right. I'll look forward to that.
So this thing is kind of a secret weapon. It's got the wraparound bridge. And for me, this pickup is like nothing else in the world. You know, it's a single coil pickup, obviously. I always find the P90 in the back of guitars is never as powerful as the front one. They're a little weaker by the bridge. But the in-between switch is really neat, and of course you can do back off the volume on one and get a really sweet tone.
Right.
But this is a really great little neck, and like I said, it's a secret weapon. I played the solo on my song Slang Justice on it, and everybody tells me that's the best Strat sound I ever heard. And I said, well, thank you, but it's probably because there's a Strat on the cover of the record, you know. They assume I'm doing that. But I said, I just got to tell you, man, it's a Les Paul. So anyway, great little guitar, and nice and light too. I mean, this doesn't weigh a lot either. Check it out.
Nice. Oh yeah, very light.
You've had Les Pauls that are twice that. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I noticed you keep a separate strap on each one of your guitars. Is that just so you can switch quickly when you're in the studio? You can grab it and you're ready to go?
I thought everybody did.
Yeah?
I mean,
I've known guys who have one strap and they just move from guitar to guitar to guitar.
Huh. Never even thought of that. I mean, this guitar is going to be hanging in a different spot, though, than a Fender, right? Because it's got the big horn sticking out. Huh, interesting. Yeah, different straps.
Yeah. So tell us about this Les Paul.
This is a 72, but I think it was a factory humbucker. You know, they put the mini humbuckers. This one had factory big humbuckers because it doesn't look like anybody did some special routing of it. I did a terrible thing, though. I took out the T-tops that were in here and swapped them out for the PAFs that are in my 1958 175. And a guy in LA, his name's Steve Ferris, told me to do that. He played in that band Mr. Mister, and stuff. And I think he was in Whitesnake for a while. He's a great guitar player. Anyway, he said, yeah, man, just switch them out. You don't need the great pickups in your jazz guitar. You're only going to be playing on the neck pickup with the tone and volume rolled off. Just switch them out, and you can always put them back. So I did. But the funny thing about this guitar is I thought I found a better sounding Les Paul. So I bought that one, took the PAFs out, and while it was being put into the new guitar, new Les Paul, I shouldn't say new, it was still a used one, I put this thing on Craigslist, and it sold in 25 minutes.
Wow. To
a fan. So the guy gets over to my house, and he goes, oh yeah, man, and he paid me top dollar and says, but just one thing, will you sign the back of it? So I did. So I signed my name right there.
Right.
And I got the new one I'd bought back with the PAFs, and I hated it. I go, this doesn't sound right. What's going on? And it didn't work. You know, the marriage of wood or the new pickups or whatever I did to it, it just didn't kill me. I found out it was a chambered one too, which is a whole different animal. It sounds cool, but it's not like what a Les Paul is supposed to do, in my humble estimation. So I was bummed. I looked for Les Pauls in the stores for like a whole year. And literally 1 year later, my band was playing at the Canyon Club, and this guy walked in. He goes, hey, man, remember me? And I go, no. He goes, I'm the guy you sold that Les Paul to. And I go, dude, listen, I've not had a day go by when I didn't regret selling that guitar. If you ever want to sell it back, I'll buy it. And he goes, oh, I'll sell it back to you. I played it for a couple weeks and put it in the closet. I don't even think I changed the strings. So he came over the next day. I gave him the money back and put the PAFs back in, and I'm really grateful that everything's cool. Now I just have a guitar that's signed by me.
Well, that makes it worth more on eBay, though, right? It's a signature edition.
Yeah. But this guitar just sounds great. I mean, it just does exactly, you know, when you get a great Les Paul, you go, man, now I get it. These things are amazing. Because I'm pretty much a Strat guy, you know, and I love Tellys and Strats. But this thing, it's talking.
It is gorgeous.
It does what they do.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, it's not real special compared to all the ones with a beautiful grain and sunbursts and stuff like that. I've seen new ones that are much more attractive and even play better and stuff. But, you know, it's working.
It's important is what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. So an SG, and it looks like you've taken off the tremolo tailpiece and put a stop tailpice on it.
Yeah, that was done by the guy that had it before me, who was actually a friend of mine. He gave me all these parts and everything. But yeah, this guitar is great. You know, it's like a Les Paul, but it's half the weight, and it's got a little thinner sound. And when I'm playing on stage with Supertramp, sometimes there's as much as 3 keyboards going. You know, the piano, the B3, maybe the Wurlitzer or synths and stuff like that. So I needed something that really cut through and, you know, had more of a beam type of a tone instead of a big wide tone.
Right.
And that's what this seems to do. Once again, super lightweight, and every pickup sounds great. The back pickup is just searing, and I love it. So
that's great. So you've multiple times now as we've looked at these, you've mentioned really lightweight. Is that something, and I know you do your test with the resonance, but is that lightweight something you look at for comfort, or do you think that really affects the tone?
I think it affects the tone. I think when a guitar is super heavy, and there are exceptions, there's not as much reaction between the body and the wood, the wood and the string. And, for every time you say something like that on camera, 50 people write in going, "You're full of it, man."
Right.
But there's just something about light guitars that I think you can control the tone better. Heavy guitars seem to have a tone that's it. That's what you got,
Right.
But I think you can control tone better with a slightly lighter weight instrument.
Right.
So anyway, could be full of it, but
it obviously works for you.
Yeah, it's working for me, yeah. By the way, what do you think?
I tend to go for a lighter one myself as well. I like to feel the guitar vibrate.
There's the comfort factor too.
Yeah. Yeah, a long night on stage with a 12-pound guitar.
Yeah, it gets old, doesn't it? We were watching some V.B. King video last night, and he's playing that 345 thing, and I bet you that thing is really a heavy, big block of wood.
That's why he played sitting down.
Yeah. In his later years, he sure did. I'll take that 3. Yeah, coming by.
So 335?
Yeah, great for playing the blues.
Yeah.
This is, I believe, a 67. And I've had this forever. I think I bought it in the early 70s. And just a nice clean 335. Once again, this is a pretty light one. Maybe that block that's going down through here is not just 100 pounds.
Quite as dense, right.
So, but
it still rings. I mean, obviously it rings and sustains very well.
Yeah, this is a great little guitar. I love it. I think my buddy Norik Renson out in L.A. is the one who put this stop tailpiece. It had the trapeze on it when I first got it.
Okay.
So
it looks like the tailpiece may be back a little bit from where they sometimes are.
Yeah, you sometimes see them closer, right? They drill in a little closer.
It's going to give a little bit of a different string tension.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing about these late 60s Gibsons that they're doing a lot better now is the neck width. I mean, this guitar has a really skinny width here, down here. A little easier to play up here, but...
Right. Having so many guitars and going between them, all the different textures you look for in albums, do you find that's a problem adjusting to neck widths and different roundness of the back of the neck and things?
I used to think it might be, but I got over it.
Yeah.
I just went, no, man, if it has strings on it, we can play it.
Right.
Get over it. I used to, One time I designed this little string bending exercise that bent every finger. Bent every finger a half step and a whole step in just a little melodic way, so that you could just pick up a telly and do that, and maybe do it up here, and try to get all that intonation right, just because of scale length and tensions. When you're playing, like my Gibsons mostly have 10s on them, 10 sets, and my Strats have a hybrid 9, 11, 16, 26, 37, 36, 46, and the hybrid set.
Right.
String tension is more of an issue than anything else.
Okay.
Also, I think spacing on the right hand.
Right.
I was just playing this baritone guitar on this track, and man, first of all, it's here.
Right.
And second of all, the spacing seems to be a little bit bigger.
So that's more of an adjustment than the neck size.
Yeah. But like I said, get over it.
Right. I love it. So now something completely different. The Gretsch is different in pretty much every way. Different pickups, different tremolo. Tell us about this one.
This is a 59, and I was doing a record date, and the producer was Jack Douglas, who's a pretty heavy cat, did those Aerosmith records, and he did John Lennon Double Fantasy, and halfway through this overdub session, kind of like this, we had a bunch of gear out. He goes, "You have any Gretches?" And I go, "No, I've actually never found one that I'm really vibing to." And he goes, "Well, keep looking, because when you find a good one, they have a magic that fits into tracks, and you'll really get a lot out of it." So that's what we did. I just kept looking, and maybe 3 or 4 months later, I bought this one, 59 Chet Atkins 6120. Interesting thing about these guitars is there's no tone knobs really. I think these are separate volumes for the pickups, and that's a master volume.
Right.
And this is like no tone. This is dark, and this is pickup selection, right? This is neck, and this is both, and this is back. But this is dark, and this is really dark. And so I was always a huge Steve Stills fan, you know, from Buffalo Springfield through, you know, Crosby, Stills and Nash and all his solo records. And, you know, you'd hear like on Wooden Ships where he would get this really jazz tone going, and I figured out he just went...
Instantly popped to it.
Instantly popped into it.
Yeah.
And then there'd be the wah-wah, where, you know, he'd probably switch it back, but I'm sure he was using this kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Bigsby's are real cool too. They're very musical. You know, I like when you can imagine that when you play an A minor, it goes to A flat minor. And the Fenders don't do that. The low strings go down much farther than the high strings. You know, so you get a real musical shake with a Bigsby. So this is kind of a little secret weapon.
Yeah.
I use it. It's a great strummer, and sometimes I did a record called Slingshot where we mic'd it and strummed it, and so it's like. So we mic'd it down here somewhere and had an amp in the other room, and it was a really unique, almost stereo kind of a sound. So,
yeah, well, it's remarkably loud.
Yeah, they are pretty loud. So. Anyway, yeah, this is obviously a real cowboy played this thing for years because it's only worn up to the 5th fret back there.
Stomping rhythm player.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's great.
So
are you Albert King or Michael Schenker?
I'm Albert King. Yeah, I was. There's a great guitar shop in Los Angeles called California Vintage Guitars, and I walked in there one day. And I've always just loved the looks of these things. I mean, this is real fanboy kind of appreciation. And I've always been a huge Albert fan.
Right.
I mean, he can do no wrong. And I saw Albert King play a lot when I was a kid, and even later, you know, even into the 90s, I saw Albert King play. I'm sorry, 2000s. And yeah, he always played that Sunburst, the natural one. Apparently in 92, 93, they finally did the reissue where the grain of the wood followed the V, which is supposedly like the 58, 59s were, the originals, which are really expensive.
Right.
So this one, I believe, is a 93. And I walked into a store and saw it hanging on the wall, and I said, man, that thing is absolutely beautiful. And I walked over to it, and when I lifted it off the wall, it was shocking, the weight. You know, I did one of these. I walked over, and you just grabbed it by the horns like this and went, wow, this thing is air, you know, it's that Carina wood.
Right.
Do it like I just did. Don't you find that to be much lighter than you would think for the thickness of it? So anyway, I had to have it.
Yeah.
When your name is Verheyen,
you got to have the V.
You got to have a V, yeah.
It's another signature guitar.
And you know what? It's really interesting. Yeah, it's a signature. That's my, oops, stay. It's the V, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, what's really cool about this instrument that I think is that it doesn't sound like a Les Paul or an SG. It's got a real voice of its own. So
when do you break that one out?
Probably later today.
All right.
I break it out for solos, you know, mainly. I also use it on the road. I take it out on the road because it's a delicious break from Strats. You know, it just has a whole other sound, and it's kind of a great stage guitar.
Right.
You know, unless you sit like this, you're really not going to play it sitting down. I was out in my garage one day, where it's kind of a big warehouse of stuff, and I found this little rack, like a 2-space rack, and I go, wow, what's in here? I haven't looked in here in years. Kind of buried under some stuff, and I opened it up, and there was a wireless system. And I haven't done anything with wireless since like the 80s, right? But I thought, if I hook that up in my studio, I could roam around the entire house playing my Flying V with that amp just blasting in there. Let's do it. So I did. And it's great. I'm playing a lot more V because you can walk around with it.
Right.
So
it actually works better when you're standing up.
Yeah, you got to stand with this thing.
So having looked now at all these incredible guitars, and you have so many more, you brought so many more with you, and as you mentioned, so many at home, and you also brought your vintage Marshalls, we've got vintage Voxes, AC30s, you've got deluxe reverbs, you've got cabinets. In your opinion, as a player, is the sound, does it originate from the guitar, does it originate from the amp? Which is the more important part of the equation?
Man, that's a hard question because it's really kind of a marriage of those things. It even has a lot to do with the cable, and I never thought I'd be a believer in that. But I was playing some cables and just switching them out and going, wow, what a difference. This is just so much more open and big and wonderful. So You know, I would say if I really had to pick, because I'm really pretty much a 50-50 guy, I would say that it has to be the guitar. Because if your action is really low and you've just got ticky-ticky sound, you know, then there's nothing the amp can do to make that sound better. You know, and I see a lot of guys who string up their instruments just so down on the deck that there's just no digging in. There's no digging in the center strings or on the top strings. You ever play a guitar where you're going up a scale and you get up to the high strings and it's just like there's no more tone. It's just ticky-ticky, right?
Right.
That's just low action. So I think you got to have that right setup first. So that was much more intelligent than I thought I'd be.
It sounded great.
Because I really thought I don't have any idea, but no, I think it's got to be the guitar. Having spewed all that out.
It's got to originate there.
Right.
Awesome.
So.
Carl, thanks so much for coming in, taking time out of your sessions and doing this and showing us these incredible instruments. It's just such a pleasure to have you here.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Please come back soon.
I'll do it.
Look forward to it.
How about tomorrow?
Great. Thanks for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. I'm Mitch Gallagher.